Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! This happened about 2 years ago. I teach philosophy and epistemology to high schoolers. I'm also fairly young for a high school teacher. I introduce myself as Faye, my given first name, which has been my given name since birth to my students. Well, I got an email from a parent reading, Mademoiselle Bittencourt, this is Karen, and I'm Kevin's mother. I'm deeply disturbed that you allow students to call you by your first name and believe this is unprofessional and confuses children. My child test scores clearly reflect this, as your class is the only one he's struggling in, and as he has maintained an outstanding academic performance, it is clear that you are the problem. I highly suggest that in order to better teach my child, you reflect on this and begin to use your professional name. So I responded, Karen, thank you for reaching out to me. I am awfully glad that you are so concerned with your child's performance in my class. As you might not be aware, I don't grade homework or tests as official standing, and they go only to show an empiricist view of one's performance. Don't worry, this means the grade you see in the system will be different from the final grade, as your child will have a 100% in my class. This was made clear in my syllabus. You should also note that I attach my comments for every assignment and include an annotated copy of your child's exams and essays so that they may see where they need to improve. If you have specifics about concepts your child is struggling with and ways that might help him learn these concepts, I'd be more than happy to meet with you over coffee or tea to discuss with you. So she responds with, the annotations are incredibly vague and abstract and offer little insight into how my child, who is brilliant, may improve. However, I see you mark him wrong every time he refers to you as Mademoiselle Bittencourt and replace it with Faye. It is illogical to ask a child to indulge in using such a silly name. I highly advise you quit marking my child wrong for using your professional name in his essays. Likewise, I believe that as you are his teacher, you should use your professional name. So I decided to be petty and respond, thank you for your response. I appreciate how illogical and unsound your argumentation is, as this is a perfect example of Hume's law. I shall be using this to model in class examples of bad argumentation from now on. Thank you for the free class materials. Well, I got a response back from her, but I ended up not responding. Honestly, it ain't worth it. A few years ago, I lived in a house that was a block away from a public park. It was a very large park, and I noticed 2 soccer games occurring when I left one Saturday to go to the grocery store. When I returned home about 45 minutes later, I noticed there was a truck parked beside my property. The occupants of that truck were on my property. There were 2 children dressed in soccer uniforms, their mom and dad, and a large Doberman. The Doberman was lying on a picnic blanket, the parents were setting up their family's picnic lunch, and the children were chasing each other, all on my front lawn. I couldn't believe my eyes. I pulled my car into my driveway and walked over to the family, asking them why they were on my property. The entitled mother then snarked at me. What does it look like? We are eating lunch. I asked why they were not eating in the public park that is a block away, and she responded, it's more peaceful here. In complete shock, I then said, this is private property, and you all need to leave now. And the mother's response was, go screw yourself, you little witch. I was furious. I pay the mortgage, and I do all the lawn work, and you think it's okay to trespass and tell me where to go on my own property? So this was the easiest revenge ever. I walked right beside them to the outside tab that was attached to my sprinkler system, and I turned it on. The family started screaming and grabbed all their stuff as they ran to their truck. The mother and father screamed obscenities the whole time and said that they were going to get me. Well, this is where revenge number 2 came in. I downloaded my security camera footage, which showed their license plates, and brought it to my next door neighbor, who just happened to be a police officer who was working that day. The parents were charged with trespassing, and I had a smile on my face for the rest of the day. It was a typical Saturday afternoon when I decided to stop by the grocery store on my way home from the library. I had just finished my shift at the coffee shop down the street and was looking forward to getting home, taking a shower and relaxing for the rest of the day. As I walked through the produce section, I noticed a woman standing near the apples, staring at me with a look of confusion on her face. I tried to ignore her and continue on my way, but she called out to me. "Excuse me," she said in a voice that was dripping with entitlement. "Can you tell me where the bread is?" I hesitated for a moment, wondering if I should just pretend I didn't hear her and keep walking, but something about the way she was looking at me made me feel like I had to respond. It is over in the bakery section," I said, trying my best to sound polite. The woman, who we could call her Karen, narrowed her eyes at me. "Don't you know how to speak properly? What are you doing just standing around here? Don't you have work to do?" I was taken aback by her rude tone and the way she was talking to me. I was just a customer, not an employee. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't work here. I'm just shopping." Karen scowled at me, her lips turning into a thin line. "Well, you look like you work here, and you certainly don't have any right to be standing around like that. Go do your job." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was 15 years old, and this woman was talking to me like I was a child. I tried to walk away, but she grabbed my arm, and her nails digging into my skin. "Ow, that hurts," I protested, trying to pull away from her. But Karen was relentless. She tightened her grip on my arm, and her eyes blazing with anger. "You listen to me, young lady," she yelled out. "I'll teach you some respect." I couldn't take it anymore. I wrenched my arm free from her grasp and took a step back. But before I could get away, Karen reached out and slapped me across the face. I was stunned, tears welling up in my eyes. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I was about to run out of the store when I noticed who was standing behind Karen. It was my mother. At that moment, I just remembered that we were supposed to meet up at the store and then head home together as we planned earlier that day. And from the expression on her face, clearly she saw me getting slapped by this awful lady because her eyes were just blazing with fury. Without a word, she put her hand on Karen's shoulder, turned her around aggressively, and knocked the damn lights out of her with a straight punch to the face. "How dare you lay a hand on my daughter?" she screamed at the now flat on her back Karen, her voice shaking with rage. "You have no right to treat anyone like this, especially a child." The police were called, and when they arrived, they pulled CCTV footage and arrested Karen on the spot. I was still shaking when we got home, but my mother wrapped me in a hug and told me that everything was going to be okay. "You did nothing wrong, sweetie," she said. After Karen was arrested and charged with assault on a minor, the judge gave her a hefty penalty for her actions. I remember my mother telling me about it, and the relief in her voice palpable. She got 3 years of probation and has to undergo anger management counseling. My mother said with a satisfied look on her face. And she has to pay a fine of $5,000 and do 100 hours of community service. But despite the fact that Karen had been punished for her actions, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease whenever I went out in public. I was always worried that someone else might try to hurt me or treat me with disrespect, and it made me feel vulnerable and scared. I tried to push those thoughts to the back of my mind and focus on my studies and my part-time job at the coffee shop. But every now and then I would catch a glimpse of Karen's face in my mind, and I would feel a shiver run down my spine. But as the days went by, Karen's assault on me became a distant memory. I was grateful that my mother had been there to defend me, and I knew that I was lucky to have her in my life. When I, 25 female, was 3, my grandparents passed away. They set up a savings account in my name. The account was meant to be accessed by me when I was 21. At that point, it contained just over $300K. My grandparents left me a letter saying they would like me to share this money fairly with other Smith Jones children, meaning my full siblings, dads a Smith and moms a Jones. By fairly, they meant that they wanted me to assess the situation and judge for myself what was fair. I never had full siblings, but I have two half-brothers, Mac and Joe Smith, who are dead as stepmom's kids. Due to the specific wording my grandparents used, I legally never had to give Mac or Joe any money. However, I see Mac and Joe as my brothers, and as the money came from our grandparents, I felt that the fairest thing would be to assign each of us 100k, so we all got an equal-sized lump sum. And I figured that when Mac, the youngest, turned 21 and took his 100k, we could split any remaining money. When I turned 21, Dad suggested I buy a house with my 100k. I found a place I loved, but it was 130k and I couldn't get a mortgage. So Dad said I should borrow 30k from the account. I did, figuring I could pay it back before my brothers turned 21, and I have been repaying it. The account should be at $208,000 right now, but due to me withdrawing and then repaying that money, it's at 195k, so I still owe 13k. Joe turned 21 recently, and as I was giving him his 100k, Joe noticed that there was less in the account than there should be. I explained and said I was going to put it all back before Mac, now 19, turns 21. Joe told Mac and both boys said I stole from them and owed them the full 13k back, plus 3 grand of interest that they felt they would have gotten, and they wanted it all paid by this summer, which gave me less than 6 months to bring the account up to 211k. I said I'd do it, but over 2 years as planned. The boys then wrote up a contract to that effect, and I went to sign it until I saw that it said 6 months to pay it all back. I wouldn't sign as we agreed on 2 years. They said I should figure it out as they were entitled to that money. I will be seeking legal advice. Later that day, I got an email clearly written by them saying that they intend to sue me for the 16k. Plus whatever is currently in the account, and additional damages and emotional distress on top of that. At this point in time, I've given Joe about 50k of his 100k, because he wanted it in installments. I responded that legally they were never entitled to any of it, and given their attitudes, I'd say they have already received an amount I deem fair, so that 50k was all they were getting. I then got a barrage of texts, calls, and emails yelling at me for going back on our deal. I blocked them. They then took to social media saying that I was trying to screw them out of their inheritance and rallying our extended family into harassing me over this. And it mostly worked as a lot of people messaged me. However, I got a message from this guy called Chris Smith. Chris said he was 27 and claimed to be my half-brother. I had never met him before, but he sent me photos of him as a kid with our dad, grandparents, and me. He showed me that he also had an account with 150k in it, and a scan of a letter from our grandparents saying this money was meant to be shared fairly among Dad's illegitimate children. Chris also told me we have another half-sibling, who is 18. He'd been looking for me for a while but only found me when Dad shared Joe's post, which had me tagged. We checked with a solicitor to make sure, and as the boys are legitimate, they aren't entitled to anything in Chris's illegitimate kid fund. And as they are my half-siblings, they aren't entitled to anything in my Smith-Jones kids fund either. I sent the boys a letter formally telling them to back off, stop posting about me online, and enjoy the 50k because it's all they are getting. The day they received the letter, Chris got a PM from Dad, asking if the boys can have some of Chris's funds. Chris also said no and told Dad we'd met. I told Mac and Joe about Chris and our other half-sibling, with Chris's permission, so it looks like my grandparents, knowing about Chris before they passed, set up 2 funds. One for the kids Dad had with my mother, who was still his wife when they passed, and one for children born out of Dad's affairs, presumably to make sure no one tried to screw anyone else over out of hurt feelings. I am getting a lot of crap but holding firm on my decision. The boys have realized that I won't back down on this, and it sounds like I've caused a schism at their house. As Joe has all the money and no intention of sharing, so Mac is now feeling twice as screwed. Plus, stepmom apparently did not know about the other half-siblings or that my half-sister was born after she and dad got married, and she's made dad move into a hotel. It sounds like my dad is looking for a long-term living arrangement outside of the family home, because it looks like she is not letting him move back in. Dad is begging me to reconsider, but honestly, I am done with all of them except Chris and my sister. About 6 years ago, I was an installer for a water softener company. At first, the job was good, the pay was nice, and while it was an on-call job, the hours weren't all that bad. Once you were done with your installs, you went home. You got a week of sick and a week of vacation time per year. Had a 104 and they covered the decent portion of the insurance. Not the greatest, but at least it was something. Well, fast forward a few years and the owners got more and more greedy, buying very expensive luxury cars and charging them to the company, taking family vacations on a company dime, and even taking company money to go gambling with. I know this because I was really good friends with the controller who did their books and taxes. After a while, they took away the vacation and sick time, stopped helping with insurance, and stopped matching the 401 because they didn't make enough to cover all that and blow the money on the luxury cars and vacations and gambling. Their excuse was that they were a small family company and couldn't keep doing it, but a few of us knew the truth. Next, they made us stay on call all day, every day, even after the installs were done, so they could ram in last-second installs at all crazy hours. Imagine showing up at a home at 8 p.m. to do a 3-hour install on a school night at a home that is 2 hours away, and they have no idea you were even coming because the owners told the salesperson to just lie to them. So you get yelled at, told to leave, get home at 10 p.m., then have to be back at the office at 7 a.m. just to show back up at the same house again the following day. This happened constantly and it got worse and worse. The May started purposely cutting hours, so if you got stuck working 2 or 3 13-hour days, you then only work 3 to 4 hour days the rest of the week. So you got no overtime, while some other unlucky sap got nailed with the time instead, only to get their hours cut the next few days, so on and so forth. A few other installers complained and were told basically too bad, deal with it. People started quitting and the owners actually just told people to pack their stuff and never come back the day they turned in their 2-week notices. They were so petty, they made people who really needed the money go without paychecks for 2 weeks, when they were just doing the right thing by giving notice. I had enough and had the same conversation the others did, and sure enough, after 7 years of busting my butt for them, I was told this is how we do things now. We are not changing it just for you. So if you don't like it, find a new job. Well, I immediately started looking and after a few weeks, found a good job with a city municipality, and I actually used the work truck to show up for the interview in between jobs. I gave 0 notice and just turned all my stuff in that Friday night after I got paid. When they asked me what the hell was going on, I told them I took your advice. They said, huh? What advice? I said, well, you told me to find a different job, so I did. Oh, and by the way, I showed up at the interview in your work vehicle, so thanks for paying for the gas to get me there. I also returned the truck with a nearly an empty tank, just so they'd have to fill it up, and I didn't clean it at all. It was petty, yes, but it made me feel better.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.